Several months ago in North Carolina, Young Dolph's SUV was shot at 100 times, but he wasn't in it. Witnesses heard the shots here in Hollywood, and nearby security video captured a person running from an SUV.
You need to hear this because this story isn't just about rap drama or somebody losing their spotlight. This is about a man making the worst possible moves at the exact moments when everything was on the line, then standing there shocked while his whole world collapsed around him. We're talking about Blac Youngsta, born Sammie Benson, straight out of South Memphis. This is somebody who came from almost nothing, fought his way out of poverty, made serious money, built a label, earned respect in his city, and had people backing him heavy. Then suddenly it all started crashing down fast. But what makes this story hit different from the usual rapper fell off situation is that it goes way deeper than music sales or weak records. This wasn't just about streams dropping or albums not connecting with fans. Nah, this situation ran way deeper than loyalty and street politics. It became connected to a heartbreaking case that sent shockwaves through all of Memphis. The wild part is people close to the situation believed the warning signs were everywhere, but somehow he still kept moving straight toward disaster anyway. And that's where things get messy. For years, blogs and social media pages danced around the full story, throwing out little pieces but never really putting everything together. Now people are finally starting to look at the bigger picture and ask how somebody who climbed so high ended up watching everything fall apart so publicly. To really understand how this all spiraled out of control, you gotta go all the way back to South Memphis, one of the roughest and most overlooked areas in America, where survival alone can feel like a full-time battle. South Memphis is the kind of place that rarely gets attention for success stories. Most of the time, the headlines only show up when something tragic happens. That's the environment Sammie Benson grew up in. No rich family, no music industry connections, no celebrity relative opening doors for him. Just pressure, survival, non-stop hustling, and a voice packed with grit and ambition.
Earlier this year, 100 bullets were fired into Young Dolph's SUV, and 3 months later, police have pinned Memphis rapper Blac Youngsta for his alleged involvement. Authorities have revealed that the van used to shoot up Dolph's bulletproof SUV in February was rented by Youngsta, whose associates later turned themselves over to the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, where they were then charged with 6 counts each of discharging a weapon into occupied property and felony conspiracy.
He started pushing music around 2012, dropping mixtapes like Fast Bricks, then Fast Bricks 2 and Fast Bricks 3. There was no major label behind him and no big cosign at first. He just kept flooding the streets with music the Memphis way, tape after tape, hoping somebody important would finally notice the grind, and eventually somebody did. Everything started shifting when Youngsta released a track called Heavy in 2015. If you know that record, then you already understand why it grabbed attention so fast. The energy on that song was intense, raw, and impossible to ignore. It sounded like real-life pressure poured straight into a beat, the kind of track that made people stop and pay attention immediately. Yo Gotti reportedly heard Heavy and wasted no time reaching out. Before long, Blac Youngsta signed with Collective Music Group, better known as CMG, one of the biggest rap labels coming out of Memphis at the time. Just like that, the dude who was grinding with almost no resources suddenly found himself connected to one of the city's most respected names. It looked like the ultimate street success story, and Youngsta moved full speed ahead with it. Blac Youngsta kept his foot on the gas during his rise. He dropped I Swear to God in 2015, followed by Baby Jesus in 2016, plus records like Shake Some, and fans couldn't get enough of the energy he brought. He stayed consistent, kept releasing music non-stop, and people connected with him because he came across as authentic. He never tried to act polished or fake for the industry. He represented South Memphis fully, and the city showed love back in a major way. By 2017, Youngsta took another big step and launched his own imprint, Heavy Camp, under the CMG umbrella. That move showed he wasn't just thinking about being an artist anymore, he was trying to build something bigger. He was making money, gaining influence, and securing a strong position inside one of the most powerful rap labels connected to Memphis. From the outside looking in, his future looked locked in for success. But while Youngsta's career was climbing fast, serious tension was also building in Memphis behind the scenes. A rap rivalry was heating up, and whether he planned for it or not, Blac Youngsta was about to become heavily connected to one side of that conflict.
Rapper Young Dolph was shot and killed at a bakery today. Young Dolph, whose real name is Adolph Robert Thornton Jr., was reportedly buying cookies at this bakery in his hometown when someone drove up and shot him. He was expected to give out turkeys for Thanksgiving on Friday. A county commissioner called his death gut-wrenching.
Now this is where the story starts turning wild, because without understanding this beef, the rest of what happened barely makes sense. Around 2014, Memphis rapper Young Dolph was creating major buzz in the industry. Born Adolph Thornton Jr. in Chicago but raised in Memphis, Dolph built his reputation independently without relying on a major label push. He had Paper Route Empire, his own movement, his own fan base, and his own lane. Reports over the years claimed Yo Gotti wanted to sign Dolph at one point, but Dolph chose to stay independent. That decision allegedly created tension that slowly kept growing louder. Then in 2016, Dolph dropped his debut studio album titled King of Memphis. To some people, it was just an album name, but in Memphis street culture, claiming a title like that carried serious weight. Many fans and insiders viewed it as a direct challenge toward Gotti's position in the city, and from there, the situation reportedly became much deeper than music. To a lot of people watching the situation, it felt like Young Dolph was challenging Yo Gotti directly, almost like he was looking him in the face and saying, "You're not what you think you are." That's when Blac Youngsta stepped into the spotlight of the beef and things started getting much more intense. On March 2nd, 2016, Youngsta posted an Instagram video aimed straight at Dolph. In the clip, he questioned Dolph's toughness, challenged his credibility, and even claimed he wasn't really connected to Memphis like people believed. The tension was already building online, but what happened next pushed everything to another level. Not long after that, Youngsta reportedly showed up in Dolph's neighborhood in South Memphis alongside his crew while filming videos for social media. The move instantly grabbed attention because it looked less like normal rap promotion and more like a serious street challenge. People online started reacting fast, and the situation became one of the biggest talking points in Memphis rap culture at the time. Then Youngsta released the diss track Shake Some. The record was aggressive, packed with threats, references to weapons, and lyrics telling Dolph to stay low while questioning his reputation in the city. Fans reacted heavily because the song had energy and controversy all over it. But at the same time, many people felt the music was adding even more pressure to a rivalry that already seemed dangerous behind the scenes. Then February 2017 happened, and that's when everything turned much darker. Young Dolph was in Charlotte, North Carolina for events connected to a college basketball weekend. On February 25th, while he was sitting inside his vehicle, chaos suddenly broke out all around him. Reports said more than 100 rounds were fired into the car. The situation shocked fans everywhere because by that point, this no longer looked like entertainment or rap competition anymore. It had crossed into something far more serious. The only reason Young Dolph survived that incident was because the vehicle he was riding in was reportedly bulletproof. That detail alone left people shocked because the level of violence involved could have easily led to something even more devastating. Following the incident, Blac Youngsta and 2 other men were taken into custody as part of the investigation. Authorities hit them with serious felony charges, including multiple counts related to firing into occupied property, along with conspiracy accusations. At the time, the situation exploded across blogs, social media, and hip-hop news because people thought careers and lives were about to change forever. But then, the case took a major turn. Prosecutors later dismissed the charges tied to Youngsta after authorities said there wasn't enough evidence placing him inside the vehicle connected to the incident. Reports also mentioned that he had an alibi and claimed he was in Durham during the incident. Because of that, the legal case against him eventually fell apart. Even though the charges were dismissed, the damage surrounding the situation never really disappeared. The tension between Dolph and the CMG side reportedly stayed strong after that night in Charlotte. Fans could feel that the rivalry had gone far beyond music by then. Dolph continued growing his brand independently, building Paper Route Empire and proving he could win without a major system behind him. Meanwhile, Youngsta stayed loyal to CMG, continued backing his camp publicly, and kept carrying himself like one of the loudest voices connected to the feud. The tension between Young Dolph and the CMG side never truly disappeared. Even during moments when the music slowed down, people in Memphis could still feel the rivalry sitting under the surface. It was the type of situation where neither side seemed fully willing to let things go, and many fans believed the conflict was far from finished. Then everything changed on November 17th, 2021. Around the afternoon, Young Dolph stopped by Makita's Cookies in Memphis, a bakery he had supported for years because he believed in giving back to the same community that raised him. That was part of Dolph's image people respected so much. He stayed connected to his city, showed love to local businesses, and moved around Memphis in a way that made fans feel like he never forgot where he came from. According to reports, 2 armed men entered the location and chaos broke out inside. Young Dolph, born Adolph Thornton Jr., later passed away at the age of 36. The news sent shockwaves through hip-hop, and especially through Memphis. He left behind loved ones, business ventures, and a legacy that many people viewed as one of the strongest independent success stories in rap. Social media exploded almost instantly. Artists, athletes, fans, and major figures across hip-hop flooded the internet with tributes and reactions. For many people, this wasn't just about losing a rapper. Dolph had become a symbol of independence, consistency, and staying authentic without letting street life completely define his future. During the aftermath, people also paid close attention to Blac Youngsta's reaction. At first, he stayed quiet publicly and fans immediately started talking online, but the situation became even more controversial days later when Youngsta performed at a concert in Dallas and included Shake Some in the setlist, the same diss track connected to his long-running issues with Dolph. That performance sparked major backlash online. Critics felt the timing was insensitive considering Dolph had just lost his life, while supporters argued it was simply part of Youngsta's catalog. Either way, the reaction added even more pressure to an already explosive situation and pushed the controversy surrounding Youngsta into overdrive. The internet completely exploded after that performance. Even people who already knew about the long history between the two camps were shocked by how everything looked publicly. In Memphis, fans understand rap beef can get serious, but to many people, performing a diss track connected to somebody who had just lost their life crossed a line that was hard to ignore, and the controversy didn't stop there. Not long after, Youngsta released a song called I'm Assuming. The music video immediately sparked heavy reactions online because one scene showed him walking through a cemetery and stopping near a gravestone with the name Thornton clearly visible, which is Young Dolph's last name. Once people caught that detail, social media went into full meltdown mode. The backlash was massive. Fans, bloggers, artists, and industry figures all started weighing in at once. Online narratives formed fast, with many people accusing Youngsta of showing disrespect toward Dolph after his passing. Whether that was actually his intention or not almost stopped mattering at that point because public opinion had already shifted hard against him. Youngsta later responded on Instagram and made it clear he wasn't trying to change who he was for public approval. He spoke about coming from South Memphis, saying the environment he grew up in didn't leave much room for sympathy, and he insisted he didn't care what outsiders thought about him. Some people respected the fact that he stayed true to himself instead of suddenly acting different for the cameras, but at the same time, a lot of critics felt he was moving too aggressively during an already painful moment for the city. To them, there was a major difference between standing on your principles and making choices that could make tensions even worse. And from that point forward, the pressure around Blac Youngsta's image started growing heavier than ever. What happened next completely changed the direction of Blac Youngsta's career. Rumors started flying everywhere online, claiming Yo Gotti had quietly removed him from CMG behind the scenes. Blogs pushed the story hard, social media ran wild with it, and suddenly people were saying even his own label couldn't stand behind the controversy surrounding him anymore. Eventually, Yo Gotti addressed the rumors publicly and called the reports fake news. He said Youngsta was still a boss in his own right and made it clear he hadn't been dropped from the label. Youngsta even appeared on the CMG project Gangsta Art in 2022, which seemed to shut down some of the speculation for a moment. But despite that, many fans felt something had changed. Even if the business relationship was technically still there, the public energy around Youngsta wasn't the same anymore. The momentum that once pushed his career forward started slowing down, and a lot of the support he once had online seemed to fade after all the controversy. As investigations tied to the Young Dolph case continued unfolding over the following years, more information slowly started making major headlines. Authorities eventually charged several individuals in connection with the case, including Cornelius Smith Jr., Justin Johnson, and Hernandez Govan. The situation drew even more public attention because people online began trying to connect different relationships, affiliations, and rumors tied to Memphis street politics and the broader rap scene. Now pay close attention to the name Hernandez Govan, because his alleged connection became one of the biggest talking points tied to this entire case. Govan wasn't viewed by investigators as just some random outsider. Reports and courtroom testimony described him as somebody connected to circles around CMG and people associated with that environment. According to testimony presented during the Young Dolph trial, prosecutors alleged that Govan helped organize the attack and that the plan was connected to Anthony Big Jook Mims. That name instantly grabbed attention across hip-hop headlines because Big Jook was known publicly as Yo Gotti's brother. Once those claims started being discussed in court, the rap world reacted immediately. Fans, bloggers, and industry insiders began revisiting years of tension between CMG and Young Dolph's paper route empire. Prosecutors argued the rivalry allegedly involved deeper issues connected to business, loyalty, money, and influence in Memphis, not just diss tracks and social media shots. Then in September 2024, the case became even more shocking when Cornelius Smith Jr., one of the men accused in the case, testified in court. According to reports, Smith claimed there had been a $100,000 payment promised for carrying out the plan. He also testified that he and another suspect allegedly tracked Dolph's movements for days, knowing he was in Memphis during his annual Thanksgiving charity events. Smith claimed they eventually tracked Dolph down at Makita's Cookies before the incident took place. During testimony, he reportedly stated, "I wasn't feeling nothing at the time, I was just trying to get some money." That statement hit people hard online, because it reduced a massive tragedy down to money and street loyalty. To many fans, the case exposed how deep the conflict had become behind the scenes. Young Dolph had built his entire reputation around independence, ownership, and refusing to let the industry control him. Yet the violence tied to that rivalry still reached him in the end, leaving Memphis and the hip-hop world shaken for years afterward. In September 2024, Justin Johnson was found guilty on all counts tied to the Young Dolph case and was sentenced to life in prison. Then in 2025, Hernandez Govan went to trial and was ultimately acquitted, a decision that shocked a lot of people in Memphis and sparked non-stop debate online about the entire case. Now this is where the conversation around Blac Youngsta becomes complicated and controversial at the same time. To be completely clear, Youngsta was never charged in connection to what happened to Dolph in 2021. Authorities publicly charged Hernandez Govan, while Johnson and Cornelius Smith Jr. were identified as the armed men involved in the case. There has never been an indictment accusing Youngsta of direct involvement in the incident itself, and that detail matters, but public opinion, especially online and in street conversations, often moves differently than the courtroom. A lot of people focus less on legal paperwork and more on connections, past conflicts, public behavior, and who was associated with certain groups during that era of Memphis rap tension. Because Youngsta had spent years publicly involved in the rivalry with Dolph through diss tracks, social media exchanges, and previous controversies, many people ended up tying his name to the overall atmosphere surrounding the feud, even without formal accusations against him. The history between the two camps became impossible for fans to separate from the bigger story once details from the investigation started becoming public. Online discussion shifted from simply asking who was responsible for the incident to bigger conversations about how the rivalry intensified over time and who may have contributed to the toxic atmosphere surrounding it. That put even more pressure on Youngsta's public image and reputation, whether he wanted that attention attached to him or not. And while all of this was unfolding publicly, Youngsta was reportedly also dealing with serious struggles in his personal life behind the scenes, making the situation around him feel even heavier as the years went on. On August 18, 2023, tragedy struck close to home for Blac Youngsta after a violent incident at a BP gas station on South Parkway East in Memphis. Reports later confirmed that the victim was Youngsta's brother, and the news instantly sent shockwaves through people connected to him. No matter how tough somebody appears online or in music, losing a family member to violence changes everything. Moments like that cut deeper than rap beef, social media drama, or public image. When tragedy reaches your own family, especially in the same city where so much pain and conflict already exist, it hits on a completely different level. What made the situation even more heartbreaking was the fact that this reportedly was not the first brother Youngsta had lost to violence over the years. Multiple losses inside one family can leave permanent emotional scars, especially for somebody who came up surrounded by constant pressure and danger in the streets of Memphis. Behind the music, controversy, and headlines, there was also real grief happening in his personal life. A lot of people online pointed out the painful irony surrounding everything. For years, Youngsta had been one of the loudest and most visible figures connected to a rap feud that eventually became linked to serious real-world consequences. His diss tracks, social media moments, and controversial videos kept him heavily connected to that public image. At the same time, his own family was also suffering losses connected to the same violence and street culture that shaped much of Memphis rap. That reality added another heavy layer to the story and made many fans start looking at the entire situation in a different way. Memphis kept showing just how cold and divided things had become. After news spread about the passing of Youngsta's brother, some people online responded by posting dolphin emojis in comment sections, a reference many connected to the long-running feud involving Young Dolph. That reaction shocked a lot of people because it showed how deep the bitterness around the situation had grown over the years. No matter where somebody stands on rap beef or street politics, many felt that losing a family member should still bring at least some level of human sympathy. But by that point, Youngsta's public image had become so controversial that a portion of the internet refused to separate his personal pain from the history attached to his name. As time went on, people also noticed major changes in his career and public presence. The non-stop music releases slowed down, appearances became less frequent, and the energy around him wasn't the same anymore. A lot of fans felt like he was carrying real emotional weight behind the scenes, while the internet continued judging every move without much compassion. At the same time, legal problems were still following him as well, adding even more pressure to an already difficult period in his life. Back in 2019, Youngsta and 3 other men were reportedly pulled over after officers said a GMC Yukon ran a red light. According to police reports, officers claimed they smelled marijuana during the traffic stop, which led to a vehicle search. Authorities later stated they found marijuana along with 3 pistols inside the SUV. Youngsta was charged with felony possession connected to prohibited ammunition, specifically armor-piercing rounds. That's the type of charge that can stay attached to somebody's record for years and continue creating problems anytime legal issues come back into the picture. Then in October 2020, Blac Youngsta found himself dealing with more legal trouble after a traffic stop in Dallas. According to reports, officers discovered a weapon near him while he was riding as a passenger in a vehicle. He was later charged with unlawfully carrying a weapon and booked into Dallas County Jail with a $5,000 bond attached to the case. That situation became another headline tied to his growing legal history and added more pressure to an image that was already surrounded by controversy. Every new arrest or charge kept his name connected to problems outside the music, and fans started noticing how often legal situations were becoming part of the conversation around him. Reports later claimed Youngsta declined a pretrial diversion deal in the Dallas case, choosing instead to fight the charges directly rather than accept a quieter resolution. Eventually, the case was dismissed in August 2024, but the process itself still added years of stress, court appearances, legal costs, and non-stop public scrutiny. And that's something people don't always understand about legal problems in the rap industry. Even when cases get dismissed, the damage can still follow somebody around for years. Every arrest creates headlines. Every court appearance becomes another distraction from the music. Every charge gives critics and prosecutors more material to bring up later if new problems appear. At the same time, an artist still has to keep releasing music, manage business relationships, protect their reputation, stay relevant online, and maintain the image fans expect from them. Behind the scenes, that can turn into an exhausting balancing act filled with lawyers, hearings, financial pressure, and constant public judgment. Over time, carrying all of that pressure year after year can wear somebody down mentally and emotionally, even if they keep trying to appear strong publicly. Many fans started feeling like the momentum and excitement that once surrounded Youngsta's rise had slowly been replaced by controversy, legal distractions, and tragedy. Then came a major moment that made people believe a full chapter of his career was officially ending. Just days before Hernandez Govan's 2025 trial connected to Young Dolph's case was set to begin, Blac Youngsta publicly announced that he was no longer affiliated with CMG. That timing caught everybody's attention immediately. This wasn't some random announcement dropped during a quiet moment in the music industry. Blac Youngsta revealed he was no longer with CMG right before one of the most talked about court cases tied to people around the label was about to dominate headlines again. At that point, all eyes were turning back toward Memphis. Social media, blogs, podcasts, and hip-hop pages were preparing to revisit years of tension surrounding Young Dolph, CMG, Big Jook, and the entire history tied to that rivalry. People knew the upcoming trial was going to bring old conversations back into the spotlight fast. Because of that, many fans believed the timing behind Youngsta's departure announcement was far too significant to ignore. Online discussions immediately exploded with theories about whether the split had been building privately for years, whether it was mutual, or whether pressure surrounding public perception played a role. No official explanation answered every question, but the moment itself spoke loudly to people watching from the outside. When an artist publicly separates from a label right before a major criminal trial tied to associates connected to that label, people naturally start analyzing every detail. To many observers, it looked less like a random business move and more like somebody trying to create distance from controversy before things became even more intense publicly. The internet reacted exactly how you'd expect. Fans started connecting timelines, revisiting old interviews, reposting clips, discussing the Charlotte incident, the years of tension with Dolph, and the names brought up during the investigation. Even though Youngsta was never charged in connection to what happened to Dolph, people still placed him near the center of conversations because of how publicly involved he had been in the feud over the years, and that became one of the biggest burdens attached to his image. Not necessarily legal guilt, but the perception of being tied to a world filled with conflict, loyalty battles, tragedy, and consequences that eventually exploded far. Beyond music, Blac Youngsta's departure from CMG felt bigger than just business paperwork to a lot of people watching. It looked like the end of an entire era. For some fans, the move came across as a sign that he understood the environment around him had become too heavy to keep carrying forever. Not an admission of guilt, but maybe an acknowledgement that the world he had been connected to came with consequences that never fully disappear. One thing the music industry rarely talks about enough is how long memories last in the streets and in hip-hop culture. Fans don't just forget years of controversy, especially when real-life tragedies become tied to the music and public rivalries. Those stories stay attached to artists long after the headlines fade. At his peak, Youngsta had built a loyal fan base because people believed he was authentic. His records connected because they sounded raw, emotional, and real to listeners who came from similar environments. Songs like Heavy stood out because fans felt like they were hearing somebody speak directly from experience instead of trying to create a fake image for the industry. People supported him because he proudly represented South Memphis every chance he got. He wasn't packaged like a manufactured celebrity. He came across as Sammie Benson first and a rap star second, and that honesty became part of what made his rise so powerful. But public support can shift fast once controversy starts stacking up. The cemetery video, the diss track performance after Dolph's passing, and years of public hostility tied to the feud changed how many people viewed him. For some former supporters, those moments damaged the emotional connection they once had with his music and personality. Meanwhile, Memphis rap kept pushing forward after Dolph's passing. Artists connected to Paper Route Empire, especially Key Glock, continued building momentum and carrying Dolph's legacy into a new generation, keeping the city's rap scene active even while the pain and tension surrounding the feud still lingered heavily in the background. Paper Route Empire kept pushing forward after Young Dolph's passing and continued building success. The independent path Dolph fought to build after turning down a CMG deal years earlier actually grew even stronger in the eyes of many fans. Instead of fading away, his legacy became even more respected across hip-hop culture. A lot of people began viewing Dolph's career as proof that staying independent could still work at the highest level. Because of that, public opinion shifted hard against many of the artists who had been openly tied to the rivalry with him over the years. Fans started looking back at old diss tracks, interviews, and social media moments through a completely different lens. And out of everybody connected to that feud, Blac Youngsta had been one of the loudest voices publicly. In today's music industry, perception matters almost as much as the music itself. Streaming platforms, playlists, social media engagement, and fan loyalty are all heavily influenced by how audiences feel about an artist personally. For many newer fans discovering Memphis rap, the focus became celebrating Dolph's legacy and supporting artists connected to his movement, not revisiting the people who publicly clashed with him. Over time, people started noticing that Youngsta's streaming momentum, mainstream visibility, and cultural presence weren't hitting the same way they once did. A lot of conversations about him became tied more to controversy than to new music. Fans began asking when the last major moment centered around his artistry instead of headlines connected to conflict or legal issues. And for many observers, the lack of a clear answer said everything. But this story also points to a bigger pattern inside hip-hop culture overall. Blac Youngsta's rise and decline became an example of what can happen when somebody fully embraces the role of the outspoken street figure inside a rap movement. Throughout his time connected to CMG, many people viewed him as the aggressive frontline personality, the artist willing to speak loudly, escalate tensions publicly, and defend the camp no matter what came with it. That role brought him attention, loyalty, and fame for a while. But over time, it also tied his image tightly to every controversy, every feud, and every tragedy connected to that environment, leaving him carrying consequences that stretch far beyond music alone. Blac Youngsta became the public face of a lot of the tension connected to the feud. He was the one posting aggressive videos online, releasing diss tracks, making headlines, and constantly finding himself at the center of controversy. His name stayed attached to the drama while the spotlight around the rivalry kept getting bigger and more dangerous. Meanwhile, CMG as a label kept expanding into a major force in hip-hop. Yo Gotti continued building his business empire, Moneybagg Yo became one of the biggest names in rap, ESTG gained momentum, and Glorilla exploded onto the scene with huge success. The label kept growing stronger commercially even as controversy surrounded parts of its history. What stood out to many observers was that the artists who eventually became the main faces of CMG's mainstream success were not the ones most heavily connected to the public war with Young Dolph. For years, Youngsta had carried much of that pressure publicly, taking the heat, absorbing criticism, and dealing with the fallout tied to the feud. Then after Dolph's passing and the major trial that followed, public conversations around Memphis rap shifted dramatically. A lot of fans felt Youngsta ended up carrying the heaviest damage to his reputation, while others connected to the broader movement were able to move forward with less attention on the controversy. For younger artists watching all of this unfold, many people believe there's an important lesson hidden inside the story. In music, especially inside major label systems, loyalty and public image don't always come with equal protection. Sometimes the artists who go the hardest for a movement publicly are also the ones left the most exposed when situations spiral out of control. Blac Youngsta stood behind CMG harder than almost anybody, and when pressure started building around the label's history and controversies, many people felt like he ended up carrying that weight publicly by himself. Loyalty can earn respect, but loyalty alone can't protect a career forever, and it definitely can't repair a damaged reputation overnight once public opinion starts turning against you. That's why so many fans keep asking the same question now. Is it over for Blac Youngsta? Is his music career finished? Right now, his position in the industry is clearly complicated. The momentum he once had isn't as strong, public support has taken major hits over the years, and the legal situations tied to his name created a trail of controversy that affected how people view him professionally. On top of that, leaving CMG meant losing the machine, resources, and promotional power that came with being connected to one of the biggest labels tied to Memphis rap. But at the same time, Sammie Benson is still here, and that matters. He still has a voice, real life experiences, and a story that could connect with people in a completely different way if he ever decided to open up honestly about everything he has lived through. Hip hop has seen artists rebuild themselves before after controversy, public backlash, and painful mistakes. Some have managed to turn difficult chapters into growth once they stopped hiding behind image and ego. The challenge is that rebuilding usually requires a different type of honesty than what fans often hear in rap music. Not just the "I don't care what anybody thinks" attitude, because sometimes that can become more like emotional armor than real self-reflection. The kind of honesty people connect to most is when somebody admits they made decisions during periods of pressure, loyalty, anger, or survival that came with consequences they didn't fully understand at the time. The kind where somebody acknowledges the damage surrounding certain choices while still trying to figure out how to move forward afterward. If Youngsta ever reaches that point publicly, it could completely change how people see his story moving forward. Blac Youngsta hasn't really reached that level of public reflection yet. Maybe he never will. For a lot of people raised in environments like South Memphis, showing vulnerability can feel dangerous. Many are taught from a young age to stay guarded, stay tough, and never let emotions show too much. That mindset isn't weakness, it's survival instinct shaped by hard experiences and harsh realities. But surviving and building a lasting legacy are two different battles entirely. Right now, a lot of people feel like Youngsta is still focused on survival while the bigger legacy he once seemed destined for remains unfinished and uncertain. And when you really step back and look at the full picture, his downfall can't be reduced to one simple mistake or headline. This isn't just a story about legal trouble, industry drama, or a rapper losing momentum. It's much more layered than that. It's the story of somebody who climbed out of extreme poverty through determination, hustle, personality, and raw talent. A man who built himself up from almost nothing, earned fame, money, influence, and respect, only to become so tied to conflict and controversy that the role he played in the streets eventually overshadowed the music that first made people believe in him. It's also the story of a rap rivalry that reportedly started over pride, competition, and questions about status in Memphis, then escalated into years of tension that later became connected to a devastating criminal case and major courtroom headlines that shook the hip-hop world. And inside all of that, there's also personal pain that often gets overlooked. Family losses, grief, trauma, and emotional damage tied to the same streets he represented publicly never really received much space because by then, many people had already decided exactly who they believed Blac Youngsta was. In the end, Blac Youngsta's story became the story of a man who seemed to realize just how heavy everything around him had gotten and responded the only way he knew how, by creating distance and going quiet. Some people might call that growth, others might see it as fear or survival, depending on where somebody comes from and what they've lived through. The answer could honestly be all three at once. One thing nobody can really deny is that Youngsta had everything needed to become a true Memphis legend. The talent was there, the hustle was real, the connection to South Memphis and the streets that raised him felt authentic from day one. Fans believed in him because he felt genuine in an industry full of people trying to manufacture an image. But somewhere between the fame, the loyalty, the controversies, and the violence tied to the feud, the music stopped being the main focus. The war around him became bigger than the career itself, and many people believe he ended up carrying consequences tied to battles that were never fully his to begin with. Hip-hop moves fast, but people rarely forget the moments that shape an artist's reputation. And if there's one lesson buried inside this entire story, it's that the biggest threat to somebody's legacy usually isn't their enemies. It's the choices they make during the moments when emotions, loyalty, pressure, and pride start clouding their judgment. Drop your thoughts in the comments because this story still has people divided to this day. And if you want a full breakdown on what reportedly happened inside the CMG empire after the Young Dolph case, that video is coming soon, and trust me, it's going to spark serious conversation. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next breakdown.